it's moving kind of funny. All right, well, anyway, so here we are, Photoshop. My image is rotated, so the first thing I want to try and do is just get the rotation of the canvas moved in the right way. I know some of you know Photoshop pretty well, but when I want to do that sort of thing, most likely going to be an image. It's sort of dealing with the larger portions of things, right? Sort of like component and those sorts of things. But what I'm looking at is image rotation. I want to go counterclockwise, I think 90 degrees. Yeah. And there we go. So now I'm rotated in the proper position. Next thing I want to do is I want to throw out some guides and test all of the lines that I've made, right? So you can see that I did the lines like we were talking about last class. But now I did that all freehand, so I want to just check everything. So what you need to do is go to View and Show Rulers here. And I don't care what units you have out here. It doesn't matter what units you have in your rulers. Just really need the rulers so we can click in that ruler area and drag and pull down a guide. And I just want to kind of go down and I'll check the places that I thought were significant and just make sure that my lines are lining up. I did a pretty good job with the by freehand there, not bad. So we're really just kind of going through and just taking a look at all the different pieces and seeing, well, that looks a little fun. Like there probably should be a little more stomach there or something in that area, but I'll deal with that later. But I want to kind of go through and just make sure that everything's lining up from front to side, right? So I can go across now and just double check everything and make sure as much as possible things are lining up. Don't worry about the mouth. Okay. You're just looking at major pieces, right? Yeah, it's okay. That's what you want to find out. Okay. So just pick one side. So let's say you're going to pick your front side. You're going to line everything up to your front side, and then just see what your side looks like, okay? Front side, that's not your front only, right? And then see how it lines up to the side. Some of you are finding some things you need to change, right? So those two look like, so we need to move some things around. So mine was actually lining up pretty well, but let me show you what I would do. Photoshop, the beauty of Photoshop is layers and the non-destructive qualities of it. So, some of you are new to Photoshop. What I would do is I would, like I said, I'm lining everything up on the front and then I'm seeing how it's falling on the side. So I'm going to assume I'm going to edit my side to match my front. Okay, so you do have to sort of make a decision about what you're going to do. What I would do is I would leave my background the same and I'm just going to take the side view and I'll just make a selection around it. I'll do Command J, which is new layer via copy, and that's always in layer, new, and then you can see layer via copy. It's kind of hard to get there, but I like Command J. now we have a separate layer. You know, I can mess this one up and feel okay about it. I'm not going to worry about it. You know, it'll help me get things looking right. So now what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and make a selection. So I get the lasso tool. So like, let's say that my head is, you know, the top of it's a little bit high. I'm going to bring it down. So what I do is I just kind of make a selection through here. And again, you don't have to be super like concerned about these things. They just have to be close is all that needs to really, you know, scale and on the lines is what we're looking for. How good it looks as a drawing is really not consequential. So with that selected, I can just take my move tool then and just drop that head down. I'm just using my arrows. You can see I can just move that all over. And because I kind of picked a section around, it sort of hides everything else behind it. So I can move this head around pretty well. And I can just kind of get that thing to fall down. I could go into, if those of you familiar with transforms, or where our scales and our rotates and everything, or a free transform. So for instance, if the head were too big, I could shrink the head down a little bit and then position it, which is not what I need to do, of course. So I could do something like that. I'm seeing some people with some differences on their feet. So I'll just go ahead and deselect, get rid of that. So like if I want to change my feet, I would go into my feet. Maybe I might like say at the knee even. Just make a lasso around that area. And I don't even need to make a new layer or anything. It cuts that section out. I'm editing this top layer here, not my background. So if I ever wanted to go back and redo this side, I can get it into position. So again, I really like to use the arrow keys, especially with shift. If you hold shift and use the arrow key, an object will move 10 pixels. So every arrow is 10 pixels, 20, 30, 40 pixels. If you do one arrow, it's only 1 pixel. So you can move things very easily. So I can make my leg shorter just by picking up the whole lower part of the leg, or I can drop it down a little bit. I could rotate it, I could scale it, I can do all the things that I need to do with these things, just kind of basically by making selections and just moving these pieces around. So a couple of you need to do that. Like I saw, like my hat's too high. You know? Okay, so now you need to select your hat or your head or the whole thing and drop the whole thing down. If the feet are sort of too low, you need to bring the feet up. You need to sort of rearrange things now to get them as close as possible to being aligned now across from each other. So let's take another 4 or 5 minutes on that. Maybe let's see where everyone is. question that I just got, can we do a new picture if we're not happy? Yeah, and you have time to do another one for sure, right? You know, once we get modeling, maybe by next week, that would be too late to change. I can see you Wednesday starting fresh.
So I'm gonna be moving this down to match this chin. So what about the rest of this stuff, right? This is supposed to.
Well, then you kind of have to like so say for her head right there, right? I mean, maybe I want to cut it out.
How would you have to cut it? Probably like right on the.
Hair. If I wanted to see her on it, go around there. That's just right.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, try redoing this one. Just one side, right? Only making one side. Just need to worry about one side. So I'm seeing some people that are seeing parts of their character coming through. So you know, if you're one of those people that's got like, you know, a section that you don't want to see, like, you know, the foot underneath, you know, you could always go back to the eraser, you know, and take out a section that's bothering you. That's background section, I can't even do that. But, you know, so you could clean up if you need to, or however that works for you to clean that area up. I would encourage you to do so. So getting real close here, we'll finish this process out. So if the guides are causing you troubles, like you're snapping to your guides, you can turn off snap to in the view. But you know, we've been doing snapping in Maya a lot, and I kind of want to just point that out to you that it's also in Photoshop, right? I mean, snapping is pretty much in almost every application. We were just doing it in the other class in video. We were snapping to regions on a video, right? So, I mean, that's something a computer can do really well. It's worth paying attention to. But if the guides are getting in your way, you could always turn off guides so that you don't snap to guides, but you can snap to other things, or you could just turn snapping off altogether. Okay? Okay, let's finish this out. So the next process that we want to do here is we want to take this side piece and move it over so it's basically right where the front one is. So we're just going to put them sort of right next to each other. Then we're going to crop the whole image so that they both are exactly the same sized images. And that's going to be really important for this as well. So when you're doing this sort of thing and you have separate pieces, you know, you want to watch out. That's why I like having people do this as one scan, because they're kind of stuck in one document the whole time. But if you try and do one document and make sure it's all the same size and get everything lined up and then do a second document and then try and do it, you really could end up with some problems in Maya where, especially if the documents are different sizes, they'll come in differently into Maya and it'll look pretty weird. It'll be hard to work with. So here we go. I already made a layer of my side view. So if you were a person that did not have to make a layer for your side view, you would want to basically select a section of your side view and say either Command J or layer, new layer via copy. right? And then you go ahead. I would actually double click on the name and call this side. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my arrow tool and I'm going to move the side over. And I could do that. I can do that with arrows, or I could do that with my mouse. But I'm just going to hold the shift key and the arrow and just drag this thing over. And basically, I could put it dead center on this thing. I'm going to just kind of put it right about here. It's not right lined up with the other character, but it's kind of midway point of the hand and the other part of the body. The main thing is I'm not moving up and down, right? So I didn't lose the relationship up and down. I made sure that I only went sideways so that I'm not losing, everything's still matching, but they're right on top of each other now. Both arms sticking out. If you have both arms sticking out, you could center it because your image will be centered. I only have half my arm, so I'm centering it to my image, right? So if you have both arms out, just put it right dead center. It's not a huge deal exactly where it is centered. It's up and down that really makes the issue. Okay, so now we'll do the cropping, and this is really the critical part. The cropping is the critical part because it makes both our images are now going to be the exact same dimension, and that's the critical part. They're the same, line up the same here, and then the image is actually going to be the same dimension. So I'm just going to get my square selection tool, and basically, I just want to make sure I get everything there. So I want to get the arm, the head, the body. That's what I'm after right there. Now they have the crop tool, so I learned Photoshop before they had the crop tool, so I always do it this way, but you could use the crop tool if you're familiar with it. This is basically, I make a selection and then do my crop, but I do image, crop. And so now we have a layer that the top one is our side layer. And if we turn off the eyeball for the top layer, the side layer, we have the bottom one is the front layer. You have to go back to the it's already set. So that's selected. Okay, everyone all right? Any questions? Any questions? No? Okay, so now we just go through a series of saves. So we're going to make 3 saves here. One's going to be a PSD, a Photoshop save. So if we ever want to come back to these image planes and work on them in Photoshop, we have these layers set aside, right? And all the little fuss work we did is saved, right? Then we're going to save 1 layer at a time. So we'll save this top layer, which is side, and that'll be called side JPEG. And then we'll turn this layer off, and we'll turn the other layer on, and we'll save that as JPEG, and it'll be called front JPEG. We're going to want these images in our source images folder, right? So that when we go and set our project, when we go to load our image planes, it'll go directly to our source images folder, and we'll be able to click right on these images, and we'll be able to load them directly into Maya, okay? So here's the process. I'll start with the side just so it makes sense to you. So here's my side image. Only selected, so we're doing this by layer, right? So I'm going to go File, Save As, right? It was saved as a TIFF. I'm not going to keep it as a TIFF. I want to make this as a JPEG. I'm going to call this by his name, Middleton. Side JPEG. I'm saving this where I got it, so that's currently going to go into this Leaper folder. That's where I pulled it off of the Scratch. So again, you want to be careful where you're putting them, of course. Now I'm just going to turn off the side layer, turn on the bottom layer, which is my front, and I'm going to repeat the process. I'm going to File, Save As, take advantage of the other name and just type in front. Make sure it's a JPEG. Everything's good. I'll say save. I'm going to keep the maximum. Common mistake here is for people to forget to change it to JPEG and keep it as a TIFF at 150 dots per inch or whatever when they scanned, which is a pretty large file source. And spinning like a 15 megabyte image in a 3D application could actually take up a lot of memory, RAM memory to display that, actually more your video card, right? And so Maya might actually slow down. So really, you do want to make sure you compress these images a little bit. It does make a difference. So yeah.
I scanned the 300. When you like lower,
Well, let's take a look at them. Before you do that, I mean, it's not a big deal doing Photoshop, but let's take, with the compression, it should bring it down quite a bit. The JPEG, right? You might want to do more than high. You might want to bring it down to medium or something, or take a look at the kilobytes and see what you got. I mean, if you can keep it in the kilobytes, would be best. I mean, if you get into the megs, probably still okay. It's people with, people get these really large images. It's not common, but it happens. Okay, so that's my 2 images. So they're saved. Last one is just the whole project. I want a PSD save, a file, a Photoshop document saved. So I'll do one more, File, Save As. I'll just call it Middleton. I'll take that name out. It's going to be a PSD, so that's the very top selection, Photoshop. I'm going to save the layers. It's going to tell me I could turn them off, but I want them, so I'll say OK. And so now I have a folder that has the original scan, my side and front images that I just created, and then a PSD document that I can work with to continue all of the work that we did just now if I needed to. And I think all of these documents are worth keeping. The original scan's worth keeping, all of it. You can see that the scans originally were 3 megabytes. I've got them down to 240 and 457 with JPEGs. and that's pretty good. So now I know there's probably a couple of people with questions about that process right there, but I'm going to just organize my files real quick. So I'm going to take these files now and put them into my source images folder. I'm going to use the same project folder I've been using for now, and I would suggest that maybe for now you guys continue to use the same project folder. It can get a little bit messy because now you have Spider-Man in there too. I can see you guys wanting to make a new project folder, but I'm going to continue to use the same project folder. You could, I would maybe make a new folder and just put all the Spider-Man stuff in the new folder, and then inside there, yeah. Sorry, yeah, that's what you're saying. So I'll just locate that project folder. Got some sounds in there. Here's my source images. So I'm gonna grab those and put them in. And I'm gonna take the PSD, I'm going to take all of it. I'm going to take every piece that was in there. I'm going to take them all and drop them all into source images. Because if I were ever going to work on it again, I don't want to like put the PSD somewhere else and like, wait, where did that go? You know, like I'm probably never going to use it, but it's right there in the project folder. And if I ever move the project folder somewhere else, all this information comes with it, right? All of my documentation, everything I used to build it. So it's good habit to just kind of keep everything in the same place. So take a moment, walk around, and just see that everyone's got those images together, and then we can get into my. Never know if you want to. It's not hard to miss something and then feel like, oh, that's it. Okay. We all there? Go ahead and open up Maya and set your project. Now, I want to remind you that the next process I'm going to go over with you is in the video. So the modeling video actually starts putting image planes in Maya, right? So that's included in that video. So I'm about to do it with you guys up here, but again, you can always look at the video as well, right? Almost there, guys. So now, working with Photoshop, with After Effects, right? Let's close.
Maya?
What am I saying? God, he's like, what? What did he say? Maya, right? That's what we're working on, right? Sorry about that. I have no idea what I said. Set project. Right? So I wanna set my project so that everything goes properly. Now, last thing is the windows. I want everyone looking up here, so we all, right? The panels are cameras. This is a camera. Front, side, all of these are all cameras, okay? And if I zoom out in one of these views, see how the grid got smaller here? If I do a change like that and then import an image plane, that distance change will then change the scale of the image when it comes in. And then this one will be bigger and this one will be smaller, or vice versa. I can't remember which one it is. And they'll never be exactly the same, just because you scaled in the window. So you took all that trouble now, right? We just spent a lot of time trying to get everything equal, right? And then this is a mistake that can happen where someone comes in, they come in, they always come in, and they always just immediately just start screwing around with Windows. So this does happen that way. And then they import their images planes, and then everything's off. So just watch that. So what I tell people to do is, one more time, I say File, New, Scene. Don't save changes, just fresh. Then I say go to Quad View or 4 View, and don't move anything. Just leave it like that. The squares should be equal, right? And now we can load our image planes. So it's quite simple. It's per panel, okay? So I'll start on this one because for some reason this big yellow square is in the way of the other one. But I'll start with the side view. We'll be doing both the front and the side view. So I click on View in the panel. You can see at the bottom there's Image Plane, Import Image. Hold for a second. I'm going to click on that. It takes me directly to my source images folder, which we all want, right? I find my Middleton side JPEG. I'll select it and say Open. And then I'm just going to repeat the process on the side, or rather the front view. Front view panel, View, Image Plane, Import Image. I look for Middleton front, Open. And once they're in there, now you can zoom and take a look at things, right? But until they're in there, you want to just keep them from being changing your cameras at all. Yeah, I couldn't get my side. Okay. Second one, a couple people with some problems, but let me get the rest of everyone moving forward, and then I'll come back and help those two people. Next step, if you recall, our character that we built with the last class, we weren't actually looking, or rather Spider-Man, we weren't looking at perspective view when we were working. We didn't see these here because I turned them off using show image planes, and so we weren't actually seeing them there. But we need to edit the image planes a little bit and get them just one last time, kind of get everything aligned. And we also need to move them out of the center of the space because they block selections when we're trying to get vertices or anything, blocks our selections. So we need to move these out of the way. So I'm just going to do that looking in quad view. I want to see all views. And you'll notice that you can actually select these image planes by clicking on the corners of the edges of them where they're purple. And you'll see that they show themselves up in your channel box. And so what I need to do is, first of all, if I have only one arm, you can see that my character is not centered at the moment. So what I need to do is I need to move this image plane slightly over so that it's centered. And then I also need to move it back so it's not at 0, 0. So I need to move it twice, okay? Some of you are centered, right? So you have both pieces, but you might be slightly off. So you want to really get in there and take a look at this and see, do I need to move it just a little bit? And this is, all we're doing is just side to side right now, just getting it centered. Right? And so because we're centering, we're looking for image centered. This is where we're going to move at, right here. It's in the image plane to shape. So I'm just going to click on, in this case, it's going to be X. I'm going to use my middle mouse, which brings up that dialog box, right? So we have to take the time to go into System Preferences and change that back. And now I can actually use the middle mouse on Image Center X. And so what I want to do is just kind of move that so that I get the head and the body centered. So I might even maximize this view and really get in there. You can see it probably, now that I'm looking at it, I should have moved the head in Photoshop, right? So now they're a little bit off. But I'm just going to kind of pick a medium there, like kind of an in-between of what that should be. I'm not going to worry about it too much. Close enough. Now, I want to move it back. So, you know, if you can remember, you can see the directions it needs to move. It's going to be Z. So I'm just going to click on Image Center Z, and then middle mouse. Just drag that thing back. And I just want to drag it back till it just gets sort of to the back of that grid. That's far enough. It really doesn't matter how far back you move it because it's an orthographic view. You can see that whereas my perspective view, I see it as scale. In my front view, it doesn't change no matter what because it's orthographic. If you can understand why that works, that really means a lot if you can understand why that's happening. So I just want to get that out of the grid so when we start modeling, these things aren't in our way. So I center it up as much as possible, and this is really the important thing on the front one. This is our X value, and this is where we're going to be switching from side to side. So we want to get this centered as much as possible. The side view is not as critical. I mean, it doesn't matter where it is in the center necessarily, oddly enough. It can be off that position and still work, but it's pretty well centered, so I'm not worried about that. All you really need to do is get it off of the grid. So I'm just going to click on, again, that's Image Center X. I'm just going to push it off to the side so that it's out of the way again. And if I could just get your eyes up here one time, just look up here. When I'm moving these, we'll walk around in just a second. When I'm moving these, the important thing to recognize is that if I move them one direction, I can see the grid right here, right? If I move it the other way, right, I don't see the grid. right? So when I move it this way, I see the grid. When I move it this way, I don't. So right now, I'm trying to look through an object. I won't see anything that I build. I'll just see this image, right? I have to move it this way, backwards, okay? So I want to see those grids there. And that's set up, ready to roll. I'm going to help you in just a minute.
It's okay. I'm inside you.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Well, where's the image at?
Well, I saved my the front is the right side, the other 10. Only getting those in front.
Bring a new image in. Where's that? Bring it in and say something different. That one, yeah. These two. Oh yeah, yeah, right there, the side view. That's PSD, that one right there. Okay. Now go to view.
So you're under 1, right? 110. Okay. Okay. So now we are at the point that we first started our class, right? Because I gave you this, and it was Spider-Man, right? So now you're full circle. We've gone all the way around that once, okay? So let's save this scene. Now, the way I saved this scene, this was actually the image plane. So, we have our geo, we have our rig, we have our walks and starts and that sort of thing. So this one's going to be the character's name again. So I'm calling him Middleton. This is just image. So I'm going to just say img _01. Save. Kind of forgot to turn off the image planes on the perspective here, so that's something that we want to do. So I'll go to show and check image planes. Don't want that in my perspective view. Once I do, once I make a change, I'd save that one more time, just so if I come to it, I don't have to do that every time. Okay. So now we're ready to model. Okay. Just gonna do like two steps, and then I'm gonna step out for a minute and give you a moment, right? So I think what we'll do is we'll leave it right here. I'll give Christy a moment to talk to you guys, and then when we come back, I'll just start modeling with you guys. We'll just do the steps. If you're really confident, just start going ahead, right? It's with the cube. But if you want to wait, I'll just come back in a little bit.
So hi everybody. I have evaluations to hand out to you guys in pencils so that you can evaluate your instructor, Kevin. And you'll need to fill out the information about the course, the section number, and the year and the semester. These are anonymous, so he won't see them, we'll see them. But we do appreciate your comments. So as much as you can, if you really like the class or if you have strong areas of things to mention, you want to make sure you give us comments because the questions are pretty broad. So I'll hand out pencils and I'll write the section number. If you have a pencil, you're welcome to use it. You pass these. Any pencils? I need these back too, so people borrow them. Who needs a pencil? Pencils? Extras? Alright, so this is ARC DM 160. And the section number is 0616. Obviously, we're in the fall semester. Kevin Leesburg. still have one? Okay, maybe not. There are a couple lots. Any of our pencils? Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Bye.
Oh, thanks. That'll help me sleep really well.
Yeah.
Thank you. God, it's like good. Yeah, right. Okay. So first of all, don't forget that in the materials folder, some of you already grabbed it, but in the 160 character modeling, it's a big file, so it'll take a while. But if you're really raring and you're ready to go, you can follow this movie, the whole process. What I did, the whole entire thing, using Spider-Man from adding the image planes, right? So I think I might even go into. Actually, I even make a project folder in there. So I make the project folder, I move the files, I put them in there, and then actually open them and do. So I do the whole process in the movie, I believe. So yeah. So I make the project folder, put it in there. I have my images here. I move them into position. I bring them in. You can see this part. We're just here. I move them out. Get them into position. Save them. Get rid of them on the center there. Blah blah blah. And then make the cube, and then just start modeling the cube, and basically end up making the whole character, right? So I mean, the whole thing's here. So if you want to take that home with you to work on it home as well. So those of you with more complex characters, I mean. It's all about time, so the more time you can put on it, the more complex it can end up being, right? But, I mean complex in the sense of these extra pieces, right? Like, the hats and all that stuff, right? So, I still want you to kind of focus on a real general shape and everything, but the more time you get, the better. So use that if you want to help you. Also, I'm seeing this is still recording. Let's turn that off.